Good morning, everybody. My name is Samantha Mirabal with Melco's application team, and we're doing our DesignShop Talk today. I'm sorry, I locked my dog out of the room and he is not pleased with that. One of my friends is getting him. All right, I apologize for that. Again, my name is Samantha Mirabal, and we're doing our DesignShop Talk. If you have questions, feel free to type them in on the comments. And don't send them privately to Melco. I don't see those until long after the live. So go ahead and type them in on the comments. We're live on both Facebook and YouTube. And we just have a small handful of questions today. So if you do have questions, please type them in so I don't miss the questions for time being short. Okay. So just kind of a brief what questions I do have would be on sleeve embroidery, doing lettering from center out, fur effects, some bobbin tension, and default on thread chart colors. All right, so good morning, Christian. So we did have a question that was how to change lettering from a column to a bean stitch. That is kind of interesting, right? So I can come in here and type in just with a regular column embroidery. There we go. We have a some text, right? So to convert it over into a bean stitch, it's not going to be just like a single bean, but what you could do is hold my shift key down on the keyboard, and then right here you have walk input method. If you click on that while holding shift, now I've got a walk stitch. So we can change that to bean. And there we go. Hang on one second. Okay. All right, so there's that. That converts it over into bean, and you can do that with any font you want. And it will basically do a bean stitch. You do have to come over here and tell it to be a bean. All right, so that is the only way you can do that. We also have, what else do we have? More questions. Someone wants a video of digitizing start to finish. We do have a series that we've done several of those online. I know there's a TP. Scott and Nate have both done some, so you can find those on the YouTube page. I'll see if we can get you some links. I did talk to the guys about possibly doing those on a regular monthly basis, but I know we've got a handful of them that we've already done. Question was, how do we toggle from center out to bottom up? That exists for text. Otherwise, you have to digitize it thinking about how you're going to do it, right? So if I come in here again and type out my text, if you go into the properties by double clicking on it, right here you've got the center out thing, all right? So that center out is going to change it from, you can see it starts where the green circle is, ends where the red X is. All right, so it's LCOEM, so it'll sew it from center out. If you have multiple lines of text, all right, so if I have multiple lines of text, to make it go from bottom to top, you would do this guy right here. All right, so now it's going to go center out, bottom to top. So it starts here and it's going to end up here. Okay, so it's really easy to do with text. All right. Can you demonstrate how to make a fringe stitch for a flower or animal fur? So there's a few different things. We do have some videos on digitizing fur, but I think what you're actually asking is how do you make the column that you end up cutting the bobbin stitch, and then you have the top thread up top kind of loose. So for that, what you want to do is digitize essentially two satin stitches. One of them is going to be really big, 60 points, let's say, and I'm going to change it to that one. All right, so you would do it like this. You would have a satin stitch, 60 points or so, and then you would have a thin, let's say 15 points, maybe as low as 12. But you would do a satin stitch at one edge of it to lock in all those threads, right? And I would even suggest doing a zigzag underlay on that to really secure that edge of those stitches, because what's going to happen is after you sew this out, what you'll do is take the hoop out, turn it over, cut that bobbin thread and remove it, and that will let all those loops that you created with the top thread get pulled to the top as fringe, right? So you can cut it, you can squiggle it around, those sorts of things. So that's how you do it. You just make 2 satin stitches, one which is long and one which is really small and on the edge of your embroidery. All right, and that'll make it where you can cut the bobbin thread. Oh, on this top stitching, make sure you turn off the underlay. Otherwise, that's messy. You don't want that. All right, so there you go. That will create your fringe for you. Okay. There was a question on how do we do embroidery on long sleeves. So one of the keys to that is making sure you have the right hoop, right? So basically you can use the small rounds. So if you're just going to do little logos on there, the small rounds work great. They come with the machines. Or you can get any of these kind of rectangle hoops that you push down the sleeve, and then you can hoop it onto your machine and sew it. So there's different ones you can find. You know, there's the Mighty Hoop, Allied. There's plenty of brands that you can find out there on the market for the different rectangle hoops. Think about how you're going to put it on the machine, because some of these are landscape, some of them are portrait. So the portrait runs, you know, your bobbin runs this way. So the portrait's probably not ideal for a sleeve. So you really would want, actually this is portrait, the landscape is the other. So the landscape one is not what you would want. You'd want the portrait view like this. Okay. But that's really all it is. If you can get a hoop in there and get it on your machine, you're good to go. All right. So when you're sewing it, you might be sewing sideways, depending on what your design is, but it's pretty straightforward. Okay. So let me quick look on Facebook and YouTube. I don't see any questions. So I'm going to go again. So this is talking about bobbin tension. So they're using some bobbins that are basically the tension is varying a lot. So what you'll find, what I've seen this in everything, you have manufacturing issues. You know, I've seen a full gross of bobbins where they've gone from normal tension down to gets tighter and tighter as it's wound. We've seen a whole gross of that. I was talking to Scott, and he's seen needles where a whole 100 pack of needles, every single eye of the needle had a burr on it. So manufacturing defects do occur. You know, it often isn't worth, especially with bobbins being as cheap as they are, going forward and, you know, fighting with it and keep on tweaking stuff to make them all work. So if you're finding that some of them are inconsistent, it's usually easier just to toss one and grab another. But, you know, you can also look at other brands. You can also look at the type of thread. That's another thing to consider. Spun versus a filament. The filaments are going to run so much nicer than the spun threads. The spun threads, I personally won't use. So I always use one of the filament threads. Good morning, Curtis, on YouTube. All right, so you can also look at different brands. You know, there's the plastic-sided ones that are by Nebs. You have the Filtech magnet bobbins. So those are nice. Trousseau by Coates is a brand. Yeah, I've used all of those with success. So you can always look at other brands, but you know, in general, you do want the tension to stay between 180. Well, it depends on your machine. So let me take that back. The bobbin tension, set it specific to your machine. All right. So whatever it is for your particular machine, if it's 180 to 200, you want it to stay somewhere between there. You can also look at the bobbin case. Your bobbin case, if it's bent a little bit, you'll end up with variations on that bobbin tension because it's snagging. So that's another thing to consider, is switching out your bobbin case. Okay. Is there any way to set the default thread brand so it always shows the brand we use when picking colors in the color field? So you can come over here and right click on this guy and change your chart to whatever you want it to be and set as default. Okay, so you can always do that, and that will That's one option you have. For the OS, I don't believe so. I haven't had a chance to get onto one of my machines. They're all running at the moment to go play with it and see. So I will check that out, and if I find a way to do it, I'll go ahead and type it up and send it over to you where you ask the question. All right. But in DS, you can assign, set default by, doing whatever you want here and then set as default. Save as default, excuse me. All right. So like I said, I had just a few questions. It was very slim today. So I don't see any typed in on Facebook or YouTube. Wait for just a second, see if any others. But short of that, I will be back next Friday with any more questions, and hopefully I'll have an answer on when we'll do more of these. I'm voting, or my vote to the team is to try to do one at least monthly, but we'll see what we all come up with. Good morning, Lydia. All right, but yeah, those were the questions we had. These videos do stay up on both Facebook and YouTube. Okay, so someone did ask on Facebook, I know this is not topic, but do you have an idea on how to center your presser foot? So presser foots, they can be bent, particularly if you do a lot of hats. So what you can always do is grab you some needle nose pliers and bend them back into place. Roughly it should be positioned, 2.5. I usually grab the 2.5 millimeter Allen wrench and make sure that's how far it's positioned back from the back of the needle. But yeah, it's something that just bends. Be careful you're not breaking up into the machine, but you can just bend the presser foot back where it belongs. Okay. All right, well, that's all the questions that were typed in. Like I was saying, these videos do stay up on YouTube, so you can reference them later, as well as Facebook. So feel free to check them out and let us know what questions you have. And we will be back next week. All right. Well, I will talk to you guys next week. Have a good one.